It's now my pleasure to introduce my co-panelists. So if they would come up when I introduce them, that would be lovely. The first panelist is Luna Dinka Visborg, thank you, the ambassador of the Kingdom of Denmark to the United States. Welcome. And it's so good to see you in my home state. We usually see each other in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Ambassador. Our second panelist is Dina Jotika Leitonen, Ambassador. Thank you. Ambassador Leitonen is the Ambassador for Arctic Issues, focused on economics at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Finland. Welcome to Alaska.
Thank you.
Excellent. We have a subject title. We'll stay close to that subject theme and that title, but we thought we would kind of twist it a little bit. And in terms of U.S. football, as many of you know, we'll call an audible and make some changes to that because this is a broad subject. The subject is highlighting our connections, shared priorities for Arctic nations. And we have many of these shared priorities for all of our nations. A while ago, the Wilson Center released a monograph called Navigating the Arctic's 7 Seas. And for those of you that know me, you have heard this too many times. But the framework is being used. I hear it in D.C. and I hear it abroad. I hear it in our own state. And it was my way of conveying mostly to Congress why the Arctic matters, but doing it in a way that would communicate for them the Arctic in very different ways, but reinforce the interrelated dynamics that happen in our Arctic. And these 7 issues, these 7 key drivers at play in our Arctic, all started with the letter C for me. And when it didn't start with a C, I made it start with a C. But this was the way I've communicated to Congress and others about why they should care and what the issues are, because the comment was, Mike, we get it, it's important, but it's too big. You got to give it to us in chunks that we can use with our constituents and that we can use with other nations. So the 7 Cs and how we navigate these seas will basically define the contours of our future Arctic. And I'm going to ask our ambassadors here to comment on these 7 Cs from their national perspectives. And so I tell people, if you remember nothing else about the Arctic, remember these 7 key drivers. Again, these are in Mike's perspective, not perhaps yours. But the 7 key drivers are climate, commodities, commerce, connectivity in all of its facets and shapes, our communities, cooperation, and competition. And once you put it in those 7 buckets and you try to figure out how we navigate those from a national perspective, from a local perspective, and a circumpolar perspective, it kind of brings the Arctic into this 3D. And so I've asked our ambassadors in that spirit to think through this framework and to give us their national perspectives on each of those Cs, or we can skip around in the Cs in the time that we have, and we have about 20 minutes or so. So, Ambassador, let me start with the C on climate. Tell us about the Kingdom of Denmark and its perspectives on climate and climate change.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. Maybe first 2 general remarks. I think we have a common objective here at this conference, which is to make sure that people still understand that the Arctic matters, as you said. With everything else that's going on, we have to make sure that it's not forgotten. And so I think that's a shared objective here. Then I just wanted to underline that the Kingdom of Denmark consists in 3 parts, as most of you know, Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands. And we cooperate closely within the kingdom. We have common priorities, but there are also substantial areas where Greenland and the Faroe Islands have taken over authority and responsibility. We have representatives from Greenland with us at the conference, and I'm sure they will speak to that themselves. On climate, I wanted to say that this is a particular interest to the Kingdom of Denmark. We can see that the Arctic region is severely affected by climate change. But I also think we have to remember that while we see the effects in the Arctic is not the cause of the major climate change. And so when we need to fight climate change, we probably also have to do it elsewhere. I'm talking about Paris Agreement and the various multilateral negotiations. We also have to, of course, be mindful of climate change in the Arctic and making sure that economic development is sustainable. We have to do that, as my Canadian colleague said, based on research and science, I think. And then I think we have to be mindful of the fact that we see climate change also as drivers of the geopolitical developments in the Arctic. We will have sea routes opening, we will have maybe facilitate access to natural resources and minerals. This is something that we'll have to focus on and make sure that that we are prepared to deal with. So that would be my comments.
Thank you. Ambassador, would you like to also take the climate C?
Thank you, Mike, and thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here. I come from an Arctic country, Finland. It's in our new Arctic strategy. We identify ourselves as 100% Arctic. So I flew from Helsinki yesterday or the day before, 20 hours in the air, and arriving here for the first time. And I haven't seen much, and I don't know much about Alaska, but I feel that we have a lot of similarities between our countries. Actually, when I discussed in the table, I think that the only thing you don't have is winter swimming. And this, if you want to have a proposal, business proposal, I can say that this is a flourishing business in Finland. 5.5 million people and more than 500,000 winter swimmers. Climate, yes, for us it means green transition. It is a challenge, but also an opportunity. A challenge because now we need to change our mind in terms of energy, and also because of the situation in Europe. We have to, and we want to decrease our dependence on Russian oil and gas. And an opportunity because we have to, and we have an opportunity now to find new sources of energy, and we have to speed up this. So this is something that we are all Nordics and European countries doing currently. For many countries, very difficult decisions. But I think in the end we will find that this green transition is a huge opportunity to change for the better.
Thank you, which feeds into the second C, which is commodities. And of course there's many commodities in the Arctic: fisheries, timber, rare earth, oil and gas. That portfolio of commodities figures into Finland and the kingdom's equation in terms of trade, but also just basic application of the technologies, the evolution of these technologies. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that point from Finland, and then Ambassador will come to Denmark as well.
Well, this letter C shows that we are all very different in the Arctic. Finland, we don't have fisheries, we don't have, we do have mining, but mining is a controversial issue. It's disputed. There are many disputes right now on mining, mainly relating on this land issue. And our commodity is forests, and but forests in the Arctic, in the Finnish Lapland, don't grow very fast. So it's not really a business opportunity for many. And they are not even very good carbon sinks. So from the climate perspective, forests are not really a big issue in the Finnish Arctic, in the north of Finland. But it is true that the green transition will require more investments in raw materials and rare materials that we do have in the ground. But how to use that potential sustainably, I think that is the big issue.
Well, let's transition to the other C, which is commerce. So we'll go from commodities to commerce. Ambassador, your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think what we need to achieve is a balance between economic and social development on the one hand, and sort of preserving and respecting nature and environment on the other hand. And there, I think, and this forum is also a good platform for that, because I think we need close sort of cooperation, consultation between the residents of the Arctic, between businesses and government. We look at some of the work that has been done in the Arctic Economic Council, and I think that's really promising. I understand that they've been working also on how to define good investments in the Arctic, both in terms of the ethics, but also environment, and that's something that we are very supportive of.
And how sustainable those are, and also how you attract capital north, right?
Exactly. Very.
It's an important issue. Many in this room, in our own home state, we struggle to bring capital north. But we certainly share that challenge of bringing capital north to prove that you can make a living in the Arctic, you can make some money in the Arctic, and in fact, if you do it well, you can make a lot of money in the Arctic and maybe keep that economy in the Arctic functioning instead of that resource going out, which by that I mean the resources of cash leaving the Arctic and going elsewhere. Yeah. The fourth C is about connectivity. And at least in my framework, connectivity isn't just about the internet and broadband, although we all need robust, redundant, and affordable broadband. But connectivity in the broader sense, roads, rails, peoples. From Finland's perspective, you've done quite a bit in the connectivity part, and then Ambassador, I'll come back to you as well from Denmark, please.
Yes, we have, and I like very much your concept of 7 Cs. I think it is important because they all somehow interconnect, and they are necessary ingredients for the sort of development in the Arctic. Connectivity being one of the probably the crucial ones now when you look at the future, and but what is I think missing in the concept is the big E, and that is education, and that is where it all starts, and that's why I want to highlight it. And that is our experience in Finland, and that now we are one of the leading technologically and digitally leading countries in the world. But that has not always been the case. 100 years ago, we were a poor agricultural country, but we have always had this sort of education as a priority, and I mean public education, and that means that everybody in every village in Finland, they have the same quality education, and when they finish their school, they have the same sort of level of skills and knowledge, and the same opportunities to continue their studies. And that has been a long way to come to this, and and has required, of course, a lot of political will. And as an example, last week, the government of Finland had to do some quite painful cuts in the budget. And where the cuts went, they went on roads and bridges. So they had to cancel some plans on roads and bridges, but they increased in innovation and research. And that was another sort of investment in the future. And of course it was quite contested, and even there was quite a debate amongst the politicians that is this the right way to approve or to improve our connectivity in Finland. The answer was yes, that this is exactly what we need to do now, and another thing is that and there has been already a long time policy in Finland and in other Nordic countries, and that's why it's great to be here with my Danish colleague, because we have set as a priority to become the most integrated region in the world by 2030. And I think we are doing quite fine, and we are well on the way to reach that goal. So connectivity is extremely important, and that's why I think it is really a great pleasure to mention the project that brings the broadband to the Arctic region. That is this northwest passage passing from Japan to Europe and landing in various places in the US, Canada, and in Europe. I think that is a kind of a project that brings us all forward and presents opportunities in terms of connecting even further, and especially in the faraway rural places where you don't have that broadband and good connections today.
Thank you. And Ambassador, before we allow you some time to talk about connectivity, but also I want to move on to communities. With the connectivity issue, we're all challenged with that in the north. We can, in some places, we have high speed, highly reliable, and even affordable internet connectivity. The issue is that when you move move away from the big cities or roads, that connectivity to the places that I would argue need it almost more than some others. There's a problem, and so some of our villages have that kind of high-speed internet, but it costs an incredible amount of money. And in the north, like they used to say in the States, there's a digital divide that was talked about for years, a digital divide, but some places in the north, there's a digital abyss. It just absolutely falls off the table, and there isn't that. So I'm glad to hear about that, what we call the last mile, is making sure that those connectivities and that equality of access is spread to all populations. Some of those need even more than the others. It's nice to hear. Thank you. In terms of connectivity, or we can move on to communities because the two are connected. Ambassador, either one or both.
Yeah, thank you. On connectivity, I would say that it's a lot about our infrastructure, and I think you touched on the most important question that is really who's going to pay. It's extremely costly. Somebody's going to pay. We have to have a conversation about that. I don't have the answer, but that's crucial. In Greenland, the government has decided to build a number of runways in order to facilitate air traffic. That is part of also facilitating economic development, facilitating tourism. Tourism is important to attract people so they can see what the Arctic is about. And from the Danish side, we're trying to we cooperate with Greenland on making that happen. On communities, just so important that we all make sure that the residents of the Arctic can have a prosperous life. And in that sense, I think this forum is ideal to give a voice both to the indigenous peoples, but also to youth, as we've seen during some of the sessions. Because this is what it's all about, and that's to give the people, the residents in the Arctic, a voice in this matter.
Same question on communities, and then I'll have a follow-up.
Communities and connectivity. Well, connectivity creates jobs. I think it is important. Actually, in Finland, in Lapland, tourism is the biggest industry right now, and the most developed, fast developing industries, and it is because of improved connections and connectivity between communities and the rest of the country and abroad, and that is important. That these communities in Lapland, they are no longer isolated communities. They are on a daily contact with the rest of the world. And actually there is a government digital roadmap to further digitalize connections and especially the tourism sector, and that is something quite promising, and has actually started to sort of reverse the immigration. People are coming back to the villages.
Thank you. And the communities see, all these seas have broad, anybody can take these anywhere, which I think is why it kind of works for many of us. But when you think about our communities, it's everything from mental health issues to coastal erosion to permafrost thaw to access to health care. It's the full portfolio of what impacts communities, and what it means to any of us here really reflects sort of your situation and what your community priorities are. Let me go to the two last C's, because they're related, they're juxtaposed, they're in conflict, they're interlinked, and the two are cooperation and competition. We always have said that the Arctic is a zone of cooperation. It is also a stable zone of peace. And although we have differences in many areas, for the most part, it's a stable zone of peace. And we have seen that the Arctic is interrelated, interconnected. And we've seen that a reinvasion of Ukraine and a war in Europe has rippled throughout the Arctic. We are not immune from global issues. Yet, for the most part, the Arctic has maintained its level of cooperation and has been able to advance really important issues between the 8 Arctic nations. And unfortunately, of course, the Arctic Council is on pause at the moment. But from the Kingdom's perspective, from Finland's perspective, we would like your perspectives on this issue of cooperation in the North, what was, what is, and maybe a peek as to what you think could be.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, the main body for cooperation in the Arctic has been and is the Arctic Council. I've always said that this is one of the very few places where we could have cooperation with Russia and actually a constructive cooperation with Russia. Well, that stopped on February 24th, unfortunately, and there's no way we can move on with business as usual. So that's what we're struggling with now. I mean, we've seen over the last decades geostrategic rivalry play out in the Arctic, but it has been manageable. Right now we're in a different situation. We have paused the cooperation in the Arctic Council. We treasure from the Kingdom of Denmark the dialogue that we're having with the 7 states members of the Arctic Council, excluding Russia, on how we go forward, because obviously there's a lot we need to do in the Arctic, and so we have to find ways to cooperate, but I think it's still early days in terms of trying to sketch out what that would look like. But this is what we will have to work on in the days and months going forward, and I think there is a big sort of shared will to make sure that we can continue our work in the Arctic between the 7 states, members of the Arctic Council, excluding Russia, and we should continue to strive to maintain low tension. We have not seen, I think it's important to say, we've not seen tensions rising in the Arctic because of Ukraine, so that's an important issue.
Same question, please.
Yes, of course we cannot accept what's happening in our neighborhood. Shocking, horrible images coming to our lives on a daily basis. It's terrible, horrible. Nobody thought that we would witness such a situation in Europe. And actually the whole security order is threatened. And in this situation, of course, we can there's no business as normal or usual, but I agree that there is a lot we can do within the Western Arctic community. We see all these challenges that we have been talking the morning and in the breakout sessions. There's a lot of needs and not a lot of potential, especially potential. And I think there's time to take this opportunity and speed up also our cooperation in many of these fields, especially in connecting ourselves and connecting and investing in research and innovation. These are key for all of us and for a better future for all of us.
So from both of your nations' perspectives, and I'm realizing we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left, the cooperation obviously is good for all 8 Arctic nations. It was good for the globe. Via the Arctic Council, it is on pause at the moment while there are deliberations going on. But from both nations' perspectives, do not let me put words in you or your country's mouths. Cooperation still is important, even if there's a pause at the Arctic Council, that other work could and should be done to keep these relationships among the 7 going, whether it's in the Arctic Council or not, and that these kind of dialogues have high value regardless of what's happening in Europe. Right? Okay, thank you. In terms of, so let's transition for this next couple of minutes here to the area of competition. Everyone knows here that the Kingdom of Denmark is a member of NATO, and everyone here knows that Finland is a NATO partner. And you share an over 800-mile border with Russia. Ambassador, I will not put you on the spot. Everyone knows what the dynamics are globally and locally. But it is of interest to many people to watch what's happening with Finland. And the security dimensions here, you are Russia's neighbor. And this issue of competition is a tightrope to walk so that your nation is protected, yet the signaling is what you just said, that it is unacceptable and a tragedy that we had not seen in decades. So in terms of the competition area, we can talk about hard security. It would be good for everyone to know what's the public perspective here, not speaking about the national perspective at all, but what's the public feeling about, what's going on right now?
We don't feel that Finland is directly threatened right now. But of course, we know and we feel that the whole European security architecture, the security as we have used to see it and to live it, is questioned and threatened. So this is a new situation, and what has happened is that this has united Europe. This has united the whole Western world, I think, in a new manner. I think we all agree that the security and stability is important, and we don't want our security to be threatened or shaken in a way that would lead us to a dangerous situation. We have a very lively debate in Finland, and we have always debated security in Finland. It is a sort of an everyday subject. Since we have this 1,300-kilometer border with Russia, we have a national defense force that has always been respected and resourced in a manner that we believe that we have a convincing national army. We just bought 64 F-35 fighters to upgrade our airspace defense, and so on and so forth. So this is not something new. But what is new, that the general opinion is now for the first time favorable. More than 50% of Finns favor NATO membership. But and this is new. This is a new situation, and it has changed very rapidly in 2 months, 3 months time. And now there is a governmental report being drafted, and it will be discussed in the parliament in the coming weeks and months. So the political discussion on our security will continue, and we will continue as we have always done, investing in our national defense. And of course, we have always been very close partners with NATO. I think we have as close as you can be without being a member. And as said, we also believe that it's important that all countries have a choice on their security decisions, and also NATO's open door policy is important to us and to all countries. We believe that all countries have rights to join or to be outside of any alliance or organization according to their own decision. So this is the situation right now.
Thank you very much for the wonderfully informative answer. Ambassador, in terms of the Kingdom of Denmark and competition and NATO, let me give you the last word on that.
Yeah, let me just say that we will let Finland and Sweden decide on their future membership or not of NATO. But should they decide to apply for membership, we would warmly welcome that. Just for the record, we have also been working to keep Finland and Sweden as close partners with NATO, and you would definitely be an asset to the alliance. Now, NATO is also increasing its focus on the Arctic. I think it's natural with the tensions rising and the Russian military buildup that we've seen over the years. We still believe in the Kingdom of Denmark that the allied Arctic member states should have a special responsibility for taking care of the Arctic, you could say. And so in the Kingdom of Denmark, we are also increasing our resources in the Arctic in terms of making sure that we have situational awareness, basically that we know what is going on. I think that's super important. It's something that is also appreciated by NATO.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being a part of this discussion. I would say that it's probably worth some follow-up discussions. And I'm sure that there are many questions which we can't take because of time from our colleagues out there, but I'm sure that they will stop you over coffee to follow up. Would you please thank our colleagues here, Ambassador Leighton and Ambassador Risberg, for this wonderful discussion. Thank you.